Hello everyone, I'm Josh from What Culture, and the future of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, or is that now the Marvel Cinematic and Television Universe, has gotten extremely interesting. I'm going to be diving headfirst into Kevin Feige and co.'s future plans, so here's your warning that this is going to be very spoiler heavy, especially for the recently released Spider-Man Far From Home. So if you haven't seen that, swing on down to the theater and then head back. We good? Okay. When Spider-Man Far From Home's marketing seemed to suggest that the multiverse was open thanks to Thanos' snaps, or Tony's and Hulk's to be fair, it looked like the possibilities for the MCU's future were incredibly broad. Because surely this meant we'd be getting to see other Earths, other dimensions, and other new characters we'd never have a chance to see before that. I mean, why else would they cause a rift if they weren't going to do anything with it? After all, Spider-Man in Sony's animated universe met Spider-Man Noir, Spider-Ham, Spider-Man, Gwen Stacy, and Penny Parker thanks to a multiverse rift. So Marvel fans were already primed to expect the same thing, kind of, to happen here. By the end of Far From Home, though, that grand idea proved to be no more than another illusion of Quentin Beck's creation, aimed not only at Peter Parker, but at the audience in order to set up an entirely different story. Consequently, just as quickly as the multiverse possibilities in the MCU were teased, they were abruptly snatched away. Or were they? As Doctor Strange's presence in Hall H during Comic-Con was felt with considerable weight for anyone hoping to see more of an expansion to the multiverse, because, remember, despite Beck's falsehoods, the multiverse does in fact exist. The fact that Beck somehow managed to work that out accurately as the foundation for his lie is remarkable to the point of it potentially being a plot hole, but that's by the by. What really matters is that the multiverse that we glimpsed in Doctor Strange, and which was vaguely referenced in both Infinity War and Endgame, is clearly going to be opened up more. I mean, it's in the goddamn title of the Doctor Strange sequel. They can't go back in it like they did with the Spider-Man trailer. And given that mad title, we can probably expect some Lovecraftian hellscape awaiting him, but Strange's reason for having to enter the multiverse may have some unforeseen consequences. And they might be total game changers for the MCU as it stands, and it could all start with a familiar Doctor Strange villain. From what we know of in the Multiverse of Madness, and it's not a great deal beyond the title and a few of the tidbits, Doctor Strange is going to be thrust into, well, the multiverse, and it's going to be mad. That's all we got. Kinda. Because we do know that Nightmare has been heavily rumoured as the villain, and openly courted by director Scott Derrickson pretty much since he made the first movie. Consequently, he's probably the one behind the trigger that leads Strange onto this journey. He is, after all, the lord of his own dimension, the dream dimension, which sounds a lot more delightful than it actually is, where humanity's dreams and a manifestation of human subconscious exists. Adjacent to that realm is the realm of madness, whose name should immediately start picking ears up thanks to the title of the Doctor Strange sequel. If Nightmare is the villain, then we can expect to see Strange and co-star Scarlet Witch heading into both of those realms, and what they do in the multiverse might create considerable echoes in the main timeline. First though, we need to talk about the Dream Dimension and why Scarlet Witch might be an important element of the sequel. In a fairly strange revelation out of Comic-Con, it turns out that Wanda Maximoff will be playing a significant role in the Multiverse of Madness, enough in fact to share the Hall H stage when the film was announced. That would suggest key billing similar to Hulk's role in Thor Ragnarok, and it would also suggest that she's heading into the multiverse too. The key difference between the Dream Dimension and the Realm of Madness is that the former is accessed through astral projection, which only Strange and Wong are capable of. That we know of the magic characters at least, while the latter is accessed through magic. Given that we're being told that we're going to see the true Scarlet Witch, you'd have to assume that we're going to see the extent of her true powers, that being her magic. So what if Doctor Strange recognizes a valuable asset in his mission to the Realm of Madness and brings her along, and they're forced to enter the Dream Dimension when they follow whatever trail they're on back to Nightmare? If that were the case, both Strange and Wanda would be forced to face their own subconscious projections, their dreams essentially. And what would be more likely to be Scarlet Witch's dream than Vision being alive? We've already been told that in the Multiverse of Madness will feed directly into the Disney Plus event show WandaVision, which would almost certainly suggest that it's the key to Vision's return. I mean, how else could a dead character return than if he's pulled straight out of the multiverse? And what if tampering with that multiverse has other unforeseen consequences, like extraordinary ones? with an X. That joke works better written down, but you know what I mean. Ever since Disney started to look into the Fox deal that would see the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, among lots of other characters, come under Marvel Studios' control, we've been told to expect to see those heroes and villains joining the current timeline rather than it being rebooted. Given the enormity of the idea of there being such big characters hidden somewhere in an existing timeline, rumors quickly turned to filling in the gaps. Surely the only way to get around the contrivance of mutants just being around and nobody talking about them, or the Fantastic Four being in hiding despite the prominence of Reed Richards, is to have some sort of trigger event that would bring them into the MCU from outside. Over the years since then, we've seen a fair few theories on where they'd come from, ranging from the Reality Stone's influence to Thanos' snap to Scarlet Witch having a House of M moment to the multiverse being torn open. And it might be that last one that's the most prescient, because maybe Mysterio got something right and tampering with the fabric of existence would have huge ramifications. It's not like there hasn't been precedent in Mordo's warning at the way sorcerers meddle with the true balance of things as well. How better to expand on that story than to show the fact that, well, he was right. Perhaps whatever brings Vision back, or whatever it is that big daft Doctor Strange is forced to do within one of the realms governed by human consciousness, ends up pulling apart existence as we've known it in the MCU. And what if that's the key to the arrival of mutants? The one big question for mutants is how we can reasonably be led to believe that mutants are all around in the MCU and that they've simply not been active until now. Yeah, Marvel could choose to explore a little more on why Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver were the only two Hydra guinea pigs to survive the experiments, but then they'd be the only two mutants in the entire universe, and one of them is dead, so maybe not. The most intriguing theory for the arrival of mutants, in my opinion, is one that actually does link to Scarlet Witch though, both in terms of special genetics and her history in the comics. After all, wouldn't it be rather beautifully poetic if it were the same character who uttered those immortal words, "No more mutants," who was partly the source of them in the MCU? So there are two possibilities here. The first linking back to the idea that everyone has the potential to be a mutant, but that powers can lay dormant until something awakens them. If Scarlet Witch and Doctor Strange are heading into realms literally governed by consciousness, dreams, and fears, they could unsettle human subconsciousness just by being there. After all, to borrow Mordo's ideology, their meddling would be an abomination and a violation. If they were to kick up enough dust, as it were, they could change fundamentally, unwittingly doing the bidding for Nightmare in the process. And what if their tinkering in the multiverse ends up awakening those latent parts of every potential mutant's consciousness, transforming them in one moment of awakening as a direct mirror of the No Mutants event in the comics? Now that would be one hell of a way to seed the coming of mutants. There's an alternative as well, of course. It could be that the meddling in the multiverse opens a rift like Mysterio's deception predicted it would. I mean, it's not like he didn't have some of the finest scientific minds behind him, including his own, so his deception may have been based on technically sound projections, which is what Far From Home's writers have actually hinted at. And a rift would be a pretty perfect way to bring a pocket of mutants, the X-Men, the Brotherhood of Mutants, and various others to be recruited by either side in the future without compromising the MCU timeline. And it could also maybe set up an Avengers vs. X-Men movie in Phase 5. I mean, a guy can dream. And while we're on, what if something more nefarious were to be awakened or brought into the reality of the MCU as well? We now know that Blade is coming thanks to the appearance of the MCU's Daywalker, Mahershala Ali, at the very end of the Marvel panel. It says something that his appearance was accepted with huge excitement rather than confusion at how Marvel Studios were going to once again account for such odd characters in a pre-established reality. As weird as it sounds, vampires are probably a little easier to explain than mutants, because you can write in some mythology that explains their dormant state, using their awakening to bring Blade out of the shadows as a protector of mankind. But even then, it's a lot to just change the fabric of a reality with the hand wave, and they were all just asleep is a little pedestrian when it comes to storytelling. So, what if the multiverse is also responsible for the arrival of more nightmarish creatures on Earth? We know they've existed before in this universe, because Korg mentions a wooden trident only being useful against a trio of vampires, but their absence suggests they're no longer present, as if they've passed into myth and legend, a bit like, you know, Thor did. The idea of the realm of madness is that it houses the manifestation of humanity's greatest fears, and vampires would be an easy element to focus on in there. And if Strange and Scarlet Witch unwittingly leave a door open, or tear one open, they could be followed back to Strange's own Earth. However, there is one more consideration as well, and it concerns the final film of Phase 4. As the Thor Love and Thunder part of the Phase 4 panel at Comic-Con confirmed, with no small amount of swagger, we're going to be seeing a female God of Thunder in the MCU. Thanks to a storyline based on the work of Jason Aaron, Jane Foster will wield Melania as the new female Thor, though she probably, hopefully, won't be called female Thor in the final film. The little issue for all of that, though, is that she can't currently wield Melania because there is no Melania in her part of the MCU main timeline. After all, it was destroyed by Hela during the events of Thor Ragnarok, and the one that Thor brought back from the past in Endgame was then returned there by Captain America. Or so the story goes anyway. It had to have been put back to keep the timeline as it was by the internal logic of the MCU, so there's really no loophole there to exploit. The only way for Jane to get her hands on Melania is for her to get it from somewhere else entirely, and it's not just like Valkyrie is going to just get another one forged for her. Instead, it has to come from the multiverse, which means the idea of other things coming through the same multiverse has to be possible as well. Mutants, Vision, Miles Morales, Cosmo the Space Dog, just bring them all in and I'll lap it all up. So this is our theory for the significance of Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, which is the best title. I think we might be onto something here, but I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. Do you think this is where the Phase 4 of the MCU is actually going, or do you think they have different plans to introduce both mutants, Fantastic Four, and even bring Vision back from the dead? But while you're down there, could you give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to whatculture.com for more lists and news like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thank you for watching. Hope you had a lovely Comic-Con, and I'll see you soon.